All right, folks, buckle up. We're diving into some seriously heavy stuff today. Aristotle's Politics, picking this one. Well, it tells me you're ready to get real about how societies work or don't.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, Aristotle does not disappoint. City-states, revolutions, what makes a government tick.
It's remarkable, isn't it, how his ideas from thousands of years ago still resonate.
Right.
It's because he was onto something fundamental about human nature and power.
Right.
How it plays out no matter the era.
Absolutely. And he doesn't shy away from the nitty-gritty, does he? I mean, he starts with the household, the building blocks, but his take on it. Let's just say, don't expect any modern self-help advice here.
Oh, absolutely not. Husband and wife, parent and child, those are givens. But then you get to master and slave as a core societal relationship.
Right. It really throws you back to the norms of his time.
It does. Makes you think, even Aristotle, brilliant as he was, couldn't fully escape the assumptions of his world. But it's fascinating how he wrestles with it, The justification of slavery.
Oh, definitely. He questions whether it's naturally just or just convenient for the guys in charge, which, let's be honest,
right,
probably makes you uncomfortable today, to put it mildly. This idea that some are naturally meant to be ruled, though, kind of reveals how deeply ingrained those hierarchies were back then.
Right. Absolutely. And it makes you wonder how much of what we consider natural now is just echoes of those old beliefs.
Good point. And speaking of things that might raise eyebrows today, Aristotle's thoughts on women's roles. Let's just say they were a product of their time.
Yeah, not exactly draking down gender norms there. He believed women had their virtues, but were meant to be led by men, essentially. Imagine basing your family on these ideas today.
Talk about a conversation starter. But okay, so we got the household, this mini power structure. Then Aristotle zooms out to the city itself, and this is where things get really juicy.
Oh, yeah, he gets into the weeds of what makes a good city, and it's not just about laws, it's size, location, resources.
And he was surprisingly specific about that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, too small and you're vulnerable, but too big and everything falls apart. It's like he predicted urban sprawl issues.
Totally. There's this great bit where he talks about a city herald needing the voice of Stentor, the warrior famous for his booming voice just to make announcements.
Right.
His point being that if your city gets so big you need a human megaphone, something's gone wrong.
He had a point, though.
Right. And it resonates so much with what we see today. Cities sprawling out of control, resources stretched thin.
Yeah.
Makes you think, what would Aristotle say about our megacities now?
That's a whole other deep dive.
Yeah.
But you can't talk about Aristotle without mentioning his philosophical rival, Plato. It's like the ancient Greek version of a rap battle.
Well, maybe not quite a rap battle, but their disagreements, especially about Plato's Republic. Man, those were heated.
Oh yeah, Plato with his utopian ideals, shared property, communal living, the works. And Aristotle's over there like, yeah, good luck with that.
He breaks down Plato's utopia piece by piece. Like, he points out people would be so suspicious, right? Wondering if kids raised communally were secretly related, leading to, well, total chaos.
Basically every roommate drama ever, just on a societal scale. It's amazing how relatable some of this stuff still is.
Right. But Aristotle wasn't just trying to rain on Plato's parade. He was making a bigger point about human nature. How messy it is.
Exactly. You can't just design a system based on how you wish people would behave. You have to deal with reality.
And that's Aristotle in a nutshell, grounding those big idealistic ideas in the nitty-gritty of how humans actually function.
Okay, so he's a realist, but his take on how governments actually change, that's where things get really interesting. He lays out these different types of government, monarchy, aristocracy, democracy, but he doesn't shy away from their downsides either. Like, he saw how easily they could become warped.
Oh, yeah. He called those corrupted forms tyrannies, oligarchies, and, well, democracies prone to mob rule. Not very appealing.
So, no system is perfect, even in theory. That's a little unsettling. What drives this constant change, then?
Well, in a word, inequality. Anytime a group feels unjustly treated, whether it's about wealth, social status, access to power, resentment builds, and eventually that resentment boils over.
And this is where he brings in those historical examples, right? Like those stories about seemingly minor disputes blowing up into full-blown crises.
Precisely. He talks about Mytilene, where a fight over an inheritance sparked a war, or Phocaea, where a disagreement over an estate dragged the whole city into the sacred war. It's family drama, Greek tragedy style.
Wow. It's amazing how those personal squabbles can expose these deeper cracks in society.
Absolutely. And those cracks can bring everything crashing down.
Speaking of things that can shake up a system, we got to talk about some of Aristotle's more controversial opinions, right? Because let's be real, he had a few.
Oh, yeah. He did not shy away from making bold claims, even ones we might find, shall we say, outdated today.
Like his views on slavery, which we've touched on. But he also had some surprising takes on wealth. I mean, you'd think being rich back then was the ultimate goal.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But Aristotle actually saw dangers in both extreme wealth and extreme poverty. He believed a moderate level of wealth was ideal for a stable society.
Right, too much wealth, you get arrogance, disconnect from the people struggling. Too little, and you get desperation, instability. It's a balancing act, apparently.
He makes you think about those modern-day billionaires, right? What would Aristotle say?
Fascinating. And speaking of Aristotle shaking things up, we can't forget his take on the Spartans, those legendary warrior kings, everybody's heroes.
Yes, the Spartans, all about that military discipline.
Right, the original six-pack abs crew. But Aristotle, he saw their focus on warfare as a weakness, not a strength.
It's true. He praised their military skills, of course, but he thought they went too far. They neglected everything else. The arts, commerce, intellectual life, all the things that make a society well-rounded.
So even the mighty Spartans weren't immune to critique. It really makes you think about the importance of balance, right? Being good at one thing isn't enough.
It's a timeless lesson. Especially in today's world, being adaptable, well-rounded, that's what helps you thrive. But we've been focusing on the big picture stuff.
Yeah, societies, governments, all that jazz. But Aristotle also gets into the nitty-gritty, right? Like, how should things actually run?
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't just an armchair philosopher. He had real-world experience. Remember, he tutored Alexander the Great.
Right. So what ancient wisdom can we apply to our modern lives?
Well, he talks about leisure, for one. But not just any leisure, he's very specific about that.
So it's not all just Netflix and chill.
Probably not what Aristotle had in mind. He was more about activities that cultivate the mind and spirit, things that enrich you, not just fill time.
So more like reading Aristotle, I'm guessing.
Exactly. Engaging with art, literature, seeking out knowledge, that kind of thing.
Makes you think about how we define downtime these days. And speaking of things that shape our minds, Aristotle had some strong opinions about music.
Oh, yeah. He believed music had a profound impact on character.
Really?
Yeah, he thought certain types of music could stir up negative emotions, even promote bad behavior.
So, like, he'd be the guy setting limits on death metal concerts.
He might have a point there. He advocated for music that promoted harmony, balance. What he called ethical melodies, you know, the kind that would make you a better person.
I can practically hear the elevator music now. But it's interesting how seriously they took the power of music. Kind of reminds me of those debates today about, like, violent video games or the lyrics in certain songs, still grappling with the same stuff centuries later.
It's true, isn't it? It shows how powerful art and culture are. What we consume, the stories we tell ourselves, they shape who we become.
It's a lot to think about. And Aristotle doesn't exactly let us off easy, does he? He brings up some pretty heavy stuff about the nature of, well, everything. Like the idea that even the most perfect system, the most ideal society, it won't last.
That's right. He saw decay as inevitable, just part of the cycle.
So no happy ending, no perfect utopia that lasts forever.
Not according to Aristotle. Change is constant. And even the best systems eventually crumble. Internal pressures, external forces, or just time itself.
That's a little depressing, isn't it? Like, no matter what we do.
It can be tough to swallow, I admit. But here's the thing. Within that seemingly pessimistic view, there's also a call to action. If change is unavoidable, then the question becomes, how do we build systems that can adapt? How do we make them resilient, able to navigate those shifts?
That's a good question. It makes Aristotle feel surprisingly relevant, even if some of his ideas seem, well, a little ancient.
Right. It's not about chasing some static utopia. That's an illusion. It's about striving to create a society that can evolve, thrive amidst all the chaos.
Like, we're not aiming for some perfect end goal, but rather a process of constant improvement.
Exactly. And that takes constant reflection, dialogue, a willingness to change course when needed. There's no one right answer, no final solution.
It's humbling, yeah, but also kind of freeing, you know? Like, we're not striving for some unattainable perfection, but just to keep making things better.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination.
Nicely put. And that journey means facing the world as it is. Messy, complicated, full of contradictions.
Right. You can't just wish those away. Gotta balance those big ideals with a healthy dose of realism. Recognize what we can achieve, but also our limitations.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, that's for sure. But that's what I love about digging into someone like Aristotle. He makes you question everything, think differently, and honestly, we probably end up with more questions than answers.
That's the sign of a good conversation, isn't it?
Absolutely. He gives us a lot to chew on, that's for sure. And it's incredible how much his ideas still resonate after all this time.
Well, he was onto something, wasn't he? It wasn't just for his time, what he was writing about. He was grappling with these fundamental questions we're still asking today.
It's true. It's kind of humbling, right? I mean, all these conversations we have now about politics, society, the kind of world we want to build, they're not new. They're part of this bigger conversation that's been going on for centuries.
And that's a powerful realization, I think. Connects us to the past, but also reminds us we have a role to play in shaping the future.
Well said. So to everyone listening, what stuck with you from our deep dive into Aristotle's Politics? What insights will you carry with you? Keep those questions in mind and keep exploring. Until next time, happy diving.